Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Van Life with Steve. On our first stop in the beautiful state of California, we're going to visit Redwood National Park, which is in the northwest of the state, just south of Crescent City. Getting right to the summary, Redwood National Park was established in 1968. However, the state parks that are part of the national park actually date back to the 1920s. As a whole, the park sees a little less than 500,000 visitors annually. As I just mentioned, Redwood National Park is really made up of 4 different parks. From north to south, at the far north, you have Jedediah Smith Redwood State Park. Just below that is Del Norte Coast Redwood State Park. Then Prairie Creek Redwood State Park. And then the southern quarter is Redwood National Park proper. The national park and the state parks are jointly managed by the state of California and the National Park Service. And there's a very long history involving the development of the state parks and the Sierra Club and the Save the Redwoods League. And it's kind of interesting if you want to read about it online. Redwood National Park is home to the tallest tree species in the entire world, the Coastal Redwood, and it protects almost half of the remaining redwood forests. The weather here is pretty much damp and cool all year round, and the temperature only varies by about 10 degrees or so throughout the year, and it's pretty misty and foggy. Those conditions are what's needed for these trees to grow to be so tall. Unless you get kind of far off deep into the woods, you should be able to get cell service pretty much throughout the park, and it's obviously a lot better the closer you are to Crescent City or US 101. With all that said, we're going to first go on a quick stroll on the Stout Grove Trail. Now, these woods may remind you of a very famous sci-fi movie. If you know what that may be, please let me know in the comments below. As we see this younger redwood tree here, you may have heard of coastal redwoods or California redwoods and giant redwoods, although I would call those giant sequoias. So what's the difference? Well, here, let's take a look at a section of the park brochure, and you can quickly see here that coastal redwoods are a little bit taller than giant sequoias. However, the giant sequoias are much larger in circumference and therefore they're more massive. You also notice that the coastal redwoods, their habitat is, it's somewhat larger than sequoias, as it's somewhat difficult to really convey the size of these trees on a screen. Here's an exhibit that's actually from Sequoia National Park, which we will see in a later episode, so you want to make sure that you subscribe and please like the video if this is of any value to you. Thanks. This exhibit compares the size of both tree species to some other trees and some famous objects. I did hear people tell me that the coastal redwoods didn't really compare to the sequoia trees, but I think because of perspective, you don't really appreciate the additional height as opposed to the larger mass of the giant sequoias. And the giant sequoias are definitely very physically imposing, but the coastal redwoods are extremely impressive in person as well. So don't discount the size of these trees. These are very, very impressive in person. Now, for that sci-fi classic, I was of course alluding to Bird Box starring Sandra Bullock. No, but seriously, there were some scenes filmed for that movie a little north of this area at the Smith River, but it's of course Return of the Jedi. So it's not these woods. Not too far from here there was some private land, and that was used for the indoor scenes for Return of the Jedi, but sadly that was logged. And so while this is not the exact set for Return of the Jedi, once you see these trees, you kind of can't unsee indoor while you're walking amongst them. If you're curious on how they managed to measure all these different trees to figure out which ones were 370 feet tall, they scanned the entire forest with LiDAR and then physically measured the trees that seemed to be the tallest based on those scans. Continuing through the Stout Grove Trail, One thing I noticed is there weren't really any signs of the trees, what they're called. And the last tree we'll see here is the stout tree, which is the largest tree in this redwood grove. This is a big tree. Moving down Howland Hill Road a little bit, which is an incredible drive, we'll next take a trek along the Grove of the Titans. This tree with this funny kind of branch or what have you is El Viejo del Norte, which is Spanish for Old Man of the North, and it has the widest branch of any coastal redwood. What was really impressive throughout the entire park is of all the forests I've been to Olympic, Sequoia, Great Smoky Mountains, the redwood forest I think had the thickest woods and the thickest tree canopy of all the forests I've been to. And it really makes visiting this park a lot easier because you're pretty much always in the shade the entire time. So it's always nice and cool for all the hiking that you do within the park. So we're not going to see Hyperion, which is the world's tallest tree, on this video. And the reason why you're not going to see it is because there aren't any developed trails there, and too many people were hiking off trail and disturbing the area around the tree. So the park superintendent closed that area off to the public. And the location of the tree is actually kept secret, although you can probably find it if you want to. However, there's serious fines and there's the risk of jail time if you hike off trail to go see Hyperion, so don't do that. It was a little funny when I asked a couple of the rangers about the tree, and they all had the same response where they just say, that tree's really not all that impressive. So I think that's maybe part of their training to try to discourage people from actually looking for the tree. On all of these trails, there are some really impressive trees on the established trails, and Hyperion, while it is the tallest redwood, it's actually only the 7th largest redwood in the park. So again, there are quite a few larger trees. The largest redwood is known as Hailstorm, and that's off the Boy Scout Trail, and it's actually the 4th largest tree in the world. It's about 44,000 cubic feet, and the largest tree in the world, which is General Sherman, which again you'll see here in a couple months, that's about 49,000 cubic feet. The coastal redwoods can be exceptionally large and larger than a lot of the sequoia trees actually. And what I'm going to do is end this hike just by giving you an idea of how amazingly quiet it was throughout the entire forest. Exiting the forest off Howland Hill Road, which is single lane, but it's two-way traffic, so sometimes you have to use pullouts on the side to let oncoming traffic get by. This is really an amazing drive. It's just magic just being able to drive through all these redwood groves, and it's one of the best drives I think you can do in the entire United States. Really incredible. Another drive, which is the Newton P. Drury Parkway, kind of connects the northern section of the park to the southern part. And along the way, they have a stop called the Big Tree Wayside, where you can go see what they call the Big Tree. For the overall recommendation for the park, it's a little borderline, so not quite as good as Sequoia, but I'll go ahead and say this is a destination park. I think you get enough here between the various hikes and everything to warrant traveling just for this park. However, if you're doing a West Coast trip up the 101 or something like that, then stopping here is a no-brainer. So definitely visit this one if you can. I will say the hikes I didn't find were particularly challenging, but I understand the one and Tall Trees does have a little bit of elevation gain when you exit the area. What you need to know about the park is this is where not getting reservations kind of burned me a little bit. You must get reservations 24 hours in advance. There are no same-day reservations, and that is to visit the Tall Trees Grove and Fern Canyon. So just know to go on the website at least a day before you visit to make reservations for those areas. Also, the roads to many of the areas in the park, so you saw Howland Hill Drive, but also to the Crescent Beach, to Tall Trees, and some other areas. Those roads are not RV friendly or trailer friendly, so be aware of that and plan likewise if you want to visit those areas. In hindsight, I probably could have done Crescent Beach, but I deferred to the park rangers on that. I would suggest a minimum of 2 days. If you're going to visit, use 1 day for the north section and take in sunset at Crescent Beach Overlook, and then use the second day to go to Tall Trees and to check out Prairie Creek State Park. There's not really a good place for sunrise. As for boondocking, I have read where some of the areas along the 101 that are closer to the park may have opened up again, but that wasn't available when I was there. I can tell you that for sure. You can probably stealth camp in Crescent City. There's actually a rest stop that's south of the national park. That's where I boondocked for the night after visiting the park. And as I was leaving, I happened across this Roosevelt elk herd, and you can see the big boy there. He's keeping his ladies in line, it looks like. Hey, big boy. And now it's time to head on to the next adventure. I want to thank you so much for joining me for this episode, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks and take care. Bye.